All right, we're almost done this journey through this unit. All right, so this one is about connecting a function, its derivative, and its second derivative. So knowing that the first derivative is increasing and decreasing, the second derivative is concavity. All right, so the function f is differentiable and increasing on the interval 0, 6, and has exactly 2 points of inflection. Which of the following could be the graph of f prime? All right, so now we're trying to figure out, all right, points of inflection means the second derivative changes sign. All right, but we're looking at the graph of f prime, which has to do with increasing and decreasing. Right. But if there's 2 points of inflection, that means f prime switches sign twice. All right, so f prime switches side twice. Now we want to graph f prime. How is f double prime related to f prime? It's its own derivative. So what does it take for a derivative to switch sign? That means I go from increasing to decreasing or vice versa. So my graph of my derivative should go from increasing to decreasing twice, which will cause the second derivative to switch sign twice, which gives me 2 points of inflection in the original. All right, so this one is always increasing, so this one is out because it doesn't change. This one goes from increasing to decreasing. That's only one change, so that one's out. This one goes from increasing to decreasing to increasing. That's 2 changes, so this one should be our right answer. All right, and the last one goes from increasing to decreasing to increasing to decreasing, which is 3 changes, which again is too many, so that one's also out. All right, so the first derivative changing from increasing to decreasing says the second derivative will go from positive to negative and switch signs, and vice versa. All right, so that's why these 2 changes make that the correct graph. All right, they give us the graph of f prime. Again, make sure you're kind of careful with reading what they're giving you, f prime, and we want to know what is the graph of f. Well, if we're looking at the graph of f prime, the positive parts of my derivative mean my original graph is increasing. The negative parts of f prime mean my original graph is decreasing. All right, so I should be increasing on the left, decreasing in the middle, increasing on the right, and that's exactly what this graph does. Increasing, decreasing, increasing. All right, so that's going to be our correct final answer. Right. A is definitely not right because it's always increasing. B is not right because it's backwards. It's decreasing, increasing, decreasing. And D is not right because it's, let's see, it's decreasing, then increasing, then decreasing, then increasing. All right, so only one fits the narrative of the graph that we're given. All right, 35. They show us the graph of f double prime. What is the graph of f? I think there's a typo there because this graph says f double prime. All right, but this one's similar to the one we just did, except for when the second derivative is positive. That means our graph is concave up. When the second derivative is negative, that means our graph is concave down. So my graph should start concave up. All right, this one's already wrong because it's starting concave down. All right, this one starts concave up until about there and switches to concave down, but that's only one switch, so that's not right. All right, so these 2 are wrong so far. All right, this one starts concave up until about there, then it's concave down until about there, and it switches back to being a cup. That one looks good so far. Let's check the last one. All right, concave up until I switch to a frown, then back to a cup, then back to a frown, and then maybe even like back to a cup again. That one has way too many switches, so C is the right answer. Now again, just thinking about what the thing they give you means and then how that's related to the graphs of the original. The graph of f prime is shown, uses the graph f double prime. All right, so it seems complicated because we don't have the original graph, but all you have to remember is f double prime is just the derivative of f prime. So I just want to graph the derivative of this function. If I'm graphing derivatives, I care about increasing and decreasing. So my graph is increasing here, decreasing until there, and increasing forever after that. So when I graph my derivative, it should be positive up until 1, so maybe something like that. And then it's negative until 3, and then it's positive after that. All right, so that's a perfectly fine graph for the second derivative. We're on our very last learning objective, and this one is probably the one that requires the most work. It's optimization. All right, so we're just finding maxes and mins, but we're doing it in an applied setting. All right, this first one probably looks like the most complicated problem, but it's actually nice because they're basically giving you all the information. You basically need to interpret the answer. All right, so they have this rectangle inside the semicircle. All right, the area of the rectangle is this formula. You could take the derivative of that formula and get that, and you figure out these critical points. Then they tell you the derivative goes from positive to negative, so increasing to decreasing at the square root of 2, which is going to tell me the square root of 2 is a maximum. So really I know the square root of 2 is the answer for this problem. So what is the actual interpretation? Well, first of all, if our derivative is going from positive to negative, I'm talking about a maximum. So automatically B and D are out. So now I need to know, are my dimensions going to be the square root of 2 by the square root of 2, or the 2 square root of 2 by the square root of 2? Well, if you think about what x is in this picture, all right, in this picture, x is the distance from the origin over. So this is x, which means I can kind of flip it, and that's also an x, and I can go straight up by that same distance, that's also an x. So if x is the square root of 2, all of these distances are the square root of 2. And what is the overall distance, or size of the rectangle? We have one height, that's the square root of 2. We have 2 that we have to put together to get the width. So our right answer is C, right? Because of that 2 right there, that makes it the right answer. All right, but really it seems like a complicated problem, but you're just interpreting your answer in terms of the picture. And then now we have to do a bit more work. All right, a farmer is creating a rectangular pen. All right, one side does not need a fence because it's along a river. So we have this river, and we create the pen. It's going to look like that. I want to maximize the area for the cow. So we know area of a rectangle is length times width. So let's call that the length and that the width. Well, we can't find the maximum of this function because it has 2 variables, but we do know that we can only use 200 feet of fencing. So there's 200 feet of fencing. I'm going to have 2 width parts and just 1 length part. So I subtract the 2w over, I get length is 200 minus 2w. So now my area function, replace the L with what it's equal to, and distribute. And now I want to find a max or a min, so I take the derivative of this, 200 minus 4w, and I set it equal to 0 to figure out where that max or min is going to happen. All right, add 4w to the other side, and then divide by 4. So w is 50. All right, so my maximum is going to happen when the width, which is the perpendicular to the river, is 50, which means A is the right answer. All right, normally when we're checking maxes and mins and absolute extrema, we have to check the endpoints, but the endpoints of this function would be to have just like a straight line this way or a straight line that way would have no area. So definitely having an area is better than having no area. All right, for 39, we have this graph, x squared minus x plus 16, looks something like this. And we're going to draw a line from the origin through a point on that graph, and we're going to minimize the slope. All right, so the first thing we need to do is figure out what our formula is going to be. Slope is the y values over the x values. We're going to get a y value from this point. So when we plug our x value into this function, we're going to get our y value. And the starting y value is the origin, so that's 0. And then the x value is of the slope, the distance we want to the right, is just the actual x value. So now we have to take the derivative of this. We have to do the quotient rule. All right, we keep low, d high, minus high, d low, over the bottom squared. All right, so now we're going to have to combine like terms and stuff. So this is going to be 2x squared minus x squared plus x minus 16 all over x squared, which is x squared. The x's cancel. minus 16 over x squared. All right, so our critical points are when this is equal to 0 or it's undefined. So it's undefined when the bottom 0, which is x equals 0. The top is 0 at x equals plus or minus 4. All right, we only care about between 1 and 8, so our only critical point that we actually care about is positive 4. So we also have to check the endpoints. We're going to check 1, 8, and 4. All right, and we're plugging them into our slope formula we have here. So let's use the calculator just to save time and space. If I plug in 1 into that slope formula, I get 16. If I plug in 8 into that slope formula, I get 9. If I plug 4 into that formula, I get 7. All right, so what is the minimum slope? It's the smallest of those numbers, which is 7, and that happens at x equals 4. The slope is 7, but it happens at x equals 4. So that's why B is right and C is not. All right, but the hardest part is making your equation, but then after that, same thing we've done for all these max and min problems. Take the derivative, figure out what's 0 or undefined. And this last problem we actually did in one of the videos. We have this box that's a square. We want to minimize the cost. So first we need to make the cost. This is a square base, so those sides are the same. And it has some depth or some length. I'll just call it depth. So our cost, there's 2 ends. Those have an area of s squared. And they're going to cost $8 per square foot. There's 4 sides. Those have an area of s times d. And they cost $6 per square foot. All right, so that is our cost function, but we have 2 variables, s and d. But what we do know is that the volume, which when we multiply our 3 dimensions together, is 36. I want to solve for d because that only appears once in my equation. All right, and now I can plug that into my function. Combining things, 24 times 36 is 864 over s. All right, so that's my cost function. I'm going to take the derivative of that. It's going to give me 32s minus 864 over s squared. All right, remember that this is actually s to the -1, and that allows me to get that derivative. All right, if I'm finding max and mins, I want to set this equal to 0. So I would do 32s equals 864 over s squared. Multiply both sides by s squared. That gives me 32s cubed equals 864. Dividing by 32, 864 divided by 32 is 27. So now s cubed equals 27. And s equals 3. So what are the dimensions that are going to minimize the cost of the box? The square sides are 3 feet each, and the depth is, well, we know the depth is 36 over s squared, so 36 over 9, which is 4 feet. Right. So that is the answer for the most cost-efficient box. Again, we're supposed to check the endpoints of this interval, but the endpoints would be making a really small square with a really big depth, which is going to cost a lot of money, or a really big square with like no depth, which is also going to cost a lot of money. So you could test the endpoints if you want, but really like whenever you have like an infinity as an endpoint, you really don't have to check it in these types of problems. All right, so that's the entire Unit 6 test. Again, it is really long, so try to kind of focus on doing well on, I'd say there's 10 sections, so I'd focus on doing well on like 6 of them. Like really make sure you can do 6 of them well, and then kind of, wing it, do as best as you can for the other 4, and hopefully when we do our retake, then those 6 you don't have to worry about anymore, and you have less to do. All right, so I think that's a valid strategy. But if you're going to do that strategy, you really have to make sure you nail those 6, because you don't have to do the entire test again for the retake. All right, but most of these pages just have like one trick that you're doing over and over again. Like when you're doing concavity, you just take the second derivative and make a number line. when you're doing graph shaping, you just have to know there's kind of 4 different possibilities. All right, so although it's a lot of problems, a lot of them are just redoing the same thing in a different way or just with a different function. All right, but good luck studying, and just do your best on the test when it happens.